friends. It is another beautiful day in Chandler, Arizona, my area of the Phoenix Metro. Welcome to my studio, Primordial Creative. I'm David Miller. And today's topic has to do with why I closed my Etsy shop. And a little bit Patreon. Two of the ways that as an independent artist, photographer, I made a significant portion of my income, if not for some of the months of 2021, some of the best income I've ever made as an artist were through these outlets. But at the end of every year, I kind of look back and say, well, do I want to continue doing this sort of thing or not? Not necessarily being an artist or a photographer, but do I want to continue this particular avenue to make money? And I take things off the table and then I try to add new things. So I love Skillshare, and it's been over a year since I made a Skillshare class. I love YouTube, and I'm trying to make a lot more of these YouTube videos more frequently. But by the end of 2021, I did not love Etsy, and nor did I love Patreon. So took those off the table, as well as Artomat, which is the small cigarette box-sized artworks. I made a lot of those during the first lockdown, and it took a long time for them to get sold because the avenues didn't open back up. But once they did, it was good money. However, it's a time suck to make those little guys. That's pretty much why I quit Artomat. You only make $2.50 on each one. So I'm here to talk about Etsy though. And Etsy as a storefront for an independent artist is something I've been advocating to friends, strangers, for a long period of time. I even made Skillshare classes on it, and I came up with 10 good reasons why I closed my Etsy shop. Now, there are solutions to each one of these things that I'm going to list to you, but it's an accumulation of cuts that kills an interest or a relationship or whatever it is. So here are 10 reasons why I closed my Etsy shop. Number one is the international shipping, which not only costs a lot, but it doesn't allow for tracking. Even today, after my shop is closed, I got a message from an international buyer that their package never arrived. It was very infrequent before 2021. I don't know if it's the international side or the US side that caused a lot of this postal ruckus. In 2020, we in America had a new Postmaster General put into place by President Trump, Louis DeJoy, who cut the US workforce down significantly and made efforts to slow the mail. I'm sure pandemic caused a lot of mail mishaps as well. But the point being that international shipping is a high burden for sellers, and there's no way to guarantee that these packages make it to their destination because you don't have tracking on packages that are in other countries. The solution is not one that I like, which is don't sell internationally. I think about half of my buyers were international. And to say that I'm not going to sell internationally was distasteful to me. And similarly, I had another Etsy shop where I was selling folk art, like masks and pottery and things like that. Everything I shipped through that Etsy site to England had gotten damaged in transit. And it wasn't because I didn't bubble wrap that thing to Kingdom Come. I don't know what happens on international shipping, but it would arrive damaged and then I'd have to eat the cost. So international shipping is by far the number one reason why I closed my Etsy shop. And kind of going along with that, supply chain issues caused materials that I needed to make my stuff to be delayed. So the main objects that I sold in my regular Etsy shop were instant film prints, being Polaroid, Instax Mini, Instax Wide, and prints, with zines and custom viewmasters being a smaller portion of my buying audience. The print side of things, I was getting archival prints from my local lab, which is about 12 miles away. And everything's advertised with luster finish. It's a great way to make my archival prints, and it was doing really well. I actually loved this part of my shop, and I actually had a pretty decent flow going on my Etsy site where I could just list a digital image and it had multiple sizes. Person would order it. I would send that order to my lab, pick it up in 2 days, ship it to them. The lab could have shipped it directly, but most of my customers want a signature on the back because that adds value, and I understand that. It was working really well for me, and it was actually a significant portion of my income in early 2021. Print orders went down. It was particular customers who preferred prints over Instax, Polaroid, Instax Wide, all of which I had as inventory at home. At a certain point, my lab wasn't able to receive the luster paper that they needed, and that's what's advertised in the Etsy listing. And being told you have to wait an extra week for paper to arrive from a commercial lab is kind of ridiculous, and it also gives customers reasons why they can refund their orders if it's not being shipped on time. And number 3 reason why I closed my Etsy shop was that my Lightroom catalog that had a nice collection of everything I had listed for prints, that got messed up randomly, totally random in the middle of last year. And because Lightroom operates with non-destructive editing, meaning it saves the edits within the program, you can either have those written to a sidecar file, or you could just have it within the program catalog, and if the catalog becomes corrupt, you lose your edits and you lose your collections. So I lost my collection that had everything that was listed as a print on Etsy, and I lost a great deal of those edits. If somebody bought a print through the Etsy site, I had to locate that file and then re-edit it the way that I did in 2018, 2017, whenever I had created that original edit. So it's kind of like an inventory fire, you know, where they burn down the warehouse and all the master tapes are lost or something. It wasn't that bad, but it became a pain. Somebody would order 10 prints and maybe they'd be, you know, $25, $30 each. So I'm like excited because it's $250, $300. Then you find out that you have to find all those original files, edit them, FTP those files over to the lab, who then says that they're unable to do your order because they can't get the materials in because of shipping chain issues. It's sort of a collapse. And before I made the decision to fully close my Etsy site, I already had taken all the prints off of it, which was about 500 listings, you know, half of my store removed because of these kind of issues. And then at this point, we're gonna talk about the content that I had on my Etsy site, because I'm an art photographer who generally works with art models, and some of that involved nudity. I've always sort of held myself to a standard that it was like a soft R, but most of it was what we call like fashion nudes, which is stuff that you would find in a fashion magazine that was revealing, but it never was like hypersexual material. It wasn't Playboy, it wasn't Penthouse, but it existed. Having that as part of my artwork was never really a big issue. Every, let's say 6 months to once a year, I would get a message from a former model who was like, hey, my life has changed. I don't want this stuff out there. And it wouldn't matter if they were compensated, if they'd signed the model release. You know, if somebody asked me to not sell nudes of them, of course I'm going to comply with that. I have found, having done this 13 years, that it's probably likely, if I kept going, anybody I ever worked with would say that. A lot of people get into that kind of modeling, that kind of photography when they're younger, and they don't think of the consequences, or it was in an era like the early Tumblr era, the 2010s, when we posted whatever we wanted and there were no consequences. But, you know, I've had a lot of friends who are like, oh, somebody from high school is stalking me now, or my coworkers are checking this stuff out. Who's buying this stuff, you know? That weirdness, like, I don't want those conversations. I don't want this part of my life. And for the first time, I think it's ever happened on Etsy in 2021, I was getting a lot of thirsty messages from people being kind of very blunt and blatant in what they wanted out of model photography and asking me for people who actually, I think that the straw that broke the camel's back is I have like a very close friend, and our agreement was that she controls anything that's revealing of her. And a lot of people were writing me asking for nudes of her, and I said, no. Not only that, I don't want to sell anything to these people because that person was, you know, my best friend. So if it's a matter of like making money or having friends. I'm gonna default to having friends. I'm gonna find other ways to make money. But again, at the beginning of 2021, I had a day job, and I would log into my Etsy site, do my listings, nothing that got me in trouble at the day job, but Etsy's algorithm that recommends stuff to you was recommending things based on what I sold, and the things that algorithm were recommending to me were Playboy style and beyond works, and that did trigger something at my day job and did get me in trouble. So even if I didn't have the thirsty customers, my number 4 reason for getting off Etsy, the number 5 reason where Etsy itself is recommending things that are getting me in trouble, that was a huge thing. And I had to weigh in my head at the time, is it worth it to keep the Etsy shop if it's getting me in trouble? And I can honestly say in January 2021, yes, it was worth it to me to keep the Etsy shop. That was what was paying my rent over the day job. But January 2022, no. The parabola of money went down far enough that I would probably default to keeping a day job today over keeping an Etsy site running. And then my final 5 reasons are a little bit smaller. Etsy introduced a new, I believe it's called the star system, and it has, a few metrics that if you hit those, then your shop is like extra recommended. So it goes beyond how customers rate your shop. It's how you meet all these targets that Etsy has. One of them includes having tracking information with every order, and I understand why that's important. However, as somebody who likes to sell, small works, Instax minis that I could just put in little envelope and put a stamp on and throw in the mailbox, and that's what made it simple for me. Now I'm expected to have tracking on every order, including ones that are like $7 and just a plain old envelope. That's something that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to make all these extra trips to the post office for something so insignificant. And going along with that, number 7 reason, there is a shipping cost that Etsy charges me every order. And I overlooked that because, it was just like $1 here, $1 there, but there's really no way to justify that because Etsy's not the one doing the shipping for me. I'm the one that's schlepping stuff down to the post office, packaging it, waiting in line, risking getting sick from the virus, whatever. Etsy charges me a shipping cost, but I'm punished in the rankings by not having free shipping be a part of every single order because international free shipping is ridiculous. And then 2, for the folk art stuff, which is kind of bulky and heavy and needs large packaging, to have somebody order over the $35 threshold, which achieves free shipping, but they are asking me to package bigger, more expensive stuff and therefore eat a lot of my profit through shipping and still get a shipping cost through Etsy, it's absurd. I don't think it's justifiable or moral or ethical that Etsy charges me a shipping cost when they do nothing to cover the cost that I pay in shipping. Number 8, I had inadvertently trained my buyers to wait for sales. And of course, most of us buy things when they're on sale, whether it's in-person store, grocery store, online retailers. The people who collected for me and normally would buy, whenever I had any kind of sale, 25% off, 30% off, they sort of noticed that I had big sales towards the end of the month because rent was always due. And, they just held off for the big sale and it caused my profits to go way down, but I was still selling the same amount of stuff. And the solution for that, I'm not really sure what the good solution is other than, have sales less frequently, but that works against what the business model is. And then the last 2 reasons have to do more about what I want from life. In 2022, I'm switching to a little more of a travel nomadic lifestyle where I'm not stuck in Arizona. Ideally, I would have a home in another state, or I'll be able to get back to international travel. I can't be tied to a place where I have inventory, where I have to make frequent trips to the post office. Like, you can still sell art, but you're far better off by having a digital storefront. Maybe you have like an online t-shirt spread shop, and it's a clearinghouse, so people make their orders from there, and I never have to touch the inventory. I never have to go to the post office. And the last reason, overall, Etsy became a huge distraction. As I'm trying to change my life to do bigger, better, different things, like let's say writing or filmmaking or animating, having to respond to orders, sometimes very large orders, but also sometimes very small orders, and answer customer questions and things like that, it's just not feasible. You know, like any small business, if it was your dream, you will power through, you'll deal with the distractions, you'll say this isn't a distraction, this is what I really wanted to do, this is what I chose to do with my life, this is how I'm gonna make it work. But for me, it's not a dream to run a shop, deal with thirsty customers, postal issues. I was definitely thrilled the months when it made, you know, a really significant amount of money, and I was able to run the shop on a daily basis, but that's not possible now. It doesn't mean you give up on your art when you close down these sort of storefronts, you know, and I'm still a big believer in the physical, tangible art product, but there's other ways to do it that don't involve me dealing with the customers, the postage, the printing, shipping materials. You know, let that be in the hands of other people. Those kind of storefronts will take time to get running. It's a little difficult to switch gears midstream, but you know, that's on the list of things to do. Every other outlet I've made money with as an artist, you know, had its beginning stages, and then I sort of figured it out, applied lessons that I learned, and it got good. I do believe whatever fan base you have, when you train them to go somewhere to find your material, follow. Of course, Etsy was like the 300-pound gorilla of independent art shops, and as many other outlets as there are out there, you know, it's unlikely that I'll get as much organic search as I did through Etsy, but I have to try. You gotta be in control of your destiny and your art career if you're a creative, and that might mean leaving this platform for another, or, you know, 100% changing what you do. You gotta do what's best for you, and that is why I closed my Etsy shop. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.